They want you soft. They want you helpless without the system. But your great-grandparents lived by a different code. On the wild frontier, they mastered secrets that let them build, fix, and thrive with nothing but grit. These 10 forgotten hacks made early Americans nearly unstoppable. And this is why they want you to stay ignorant. Number 1. Traveling by natural landmarks. Today, if you're lost, you just pull out your phone. For early Americans, their map was the world itself. Rivers weren't just obstacles, they were the original highways. Settlers followed the Ohio and the Mississippi for hundreds of miles, using the flow of the water as a constant guide west. Huge mountain ranges, like the Appalachians, were giant signposts. You either found a path through them or used their peaks to keep your bearings across the empty plains. This wasn't a casual hike, it was pure survival. They learned to read the land because if they didn't, they'd simply disappear. They often used the trails already carved out by Native Americans, who knew the smartest and safest routes. But knowing where you were going was only half the battle. Number 2. Preserving food for long journeys. The other half of the battle was just staying alive. There were no grocery stores, and a journey west could take months. You couldn't carry enough fresh food, so you had to be resourceful. Meat was packed in barrels of salt or smoked for weeks, creating a frontier jerky that could last the entire trip. Fruits and vegetables were laid out to dry in the sun, preserving them for the long winter ahead. This wasn't a hobby, it was a science of survival. If you miscalculated, the stories got dark. Pioneers stranded by winter got so desperate they boiled their own boots for soup. The infamous Donner Party faced even worse choices. But keeping your food safe was just one problem. You also had to keep yourself safe. Number 3. Using multi-purpose tools. When you're out on the frontier, there's no hardware store. You couldn't pack a different tool for every single job. So instead, you had to get creative. Everything had to serve more than one purpose. Historians point out that settlers had to adapt to almost primitive conditions. If you didn't have a plow, you used a sharp stick. If you didn't have a hammer, you used a rock or the back of your axe. In the most extreme cases, even your own clothes could become a tool for survival. When people got stranded, they boiled their leather boots for something, anything, to eat. That's because the most important tool wasn't in their hands, it was in their head. But ingenuity alone couldn't heal you when things went wrong. Number 4. Building cabins from local materials. When settlers arrived on the frontier, they didn't have blueprints or supply trucks. All they had were forests, so they learned to adapt, and fast. As one historian put it, the wilderness was the real boss. It forced them to forget their European ways and learn from the people who already knew how to survive there. They started building log cabins, a technique they picked up directly from Native American tribes like the Cherokee and Iroquois. It wasn't about style, it was a necessity. You either used the trees around you to build a home, or you simply didn't make it. But even the strongest cabin couldn't protect you from sickness or injury. Number 5. Hunting and fishing for daily food. A strong roof over your head was one thing, but an empty stomach was a daily threat. Out on the frontier, hunting wasn't a hobby, it was your full-time job. Settlers quickly ditched their old European clothes for buckskin hunting shirts and moccasins. This wasn't a fashion statement, it was a sign that the wilderness was in charge now. You either learned to track, hunt, and fish, or you starved. When food ran out, the stories get dark fast. Pioneers were known to boil their own boots just for a little broth. Failure meant you simply didn't eat. But even if you caught dinner, you had to know what else the forest offered. Number 6. Repairing equipment by hand. When your wagon will cracked 1,000 miles from civilization, you couldn't just call for a mechanic. You were the mechanic. On the frontier, every journey was a brutal stress test on your gear. Tools, wagons, even clothes were constantly breaking down. A snapped plow handle wasn't an inconvenience. It was a threat to your food supply. So you learned to improvise, carving a new one, or even plowing with a sharpened stick if that's all you had. Settlers became masters of fixing things with nothing, because failure meant you were stranded, starving, or both. But some problems couldn't be solved with a piece of wood and a clever fix. Number 7. Creating medicine from native plants. When sickness or injury struck on the frontier, there was no doctor to call. Your pharmacy was the forest itself, and you had to know which plants could save your life. A lot of this forgotten knowledge came directly from Native American tribes, who had been using these remedies for centuries. Settlers learned that chewing on willow bark, the original source of aspirin, could break a fever. They used flowers like echinacea to fight off infections and wild ginger to settle a bad stomach. This wasn't just folklore, it was practical, life-or-death science. Knowing which root to boil was just as critical for survival as knowing how to build a fire. But the best remedies in the world couldn't protect you from the dangers that were always lurking just outside your door. Number 8. Storing food underground. One of the biggest dangers wasn't an animal or an outlaw. It was the coming winter. A huge harvest in the fall meant nothing if it all rotted by January. Settlers didn't have refrigerators, so they used the earth itself. They dug root cellars, which were basically underground pantries that used the ground's naturally stable temperature to keep food fresh. This simple trick kept potatoes, carrots, and apples good for months, safe from freezing temperatures and out of reach from hungry animals. It was a brilliant, low-tech hack that ensured a family had enough food to survive the harshest seasons. But food wasn't the only thing they needed to manage to stay alive. They also had to manage the one resource you can't live without for more than 3 days. Number 9. Sharing skills within communities. The image of the lone frontiersman is a myth. The truth is, nobody made it out there alone. The harsh reality of the frontier forced people to rely on each other, or die. One person might be a great carpenter, while their neighbor was a skilled hunter, and another knew which plants were safe to eat. They had to pool their knowledge. Think of the classic barn raising, where an entire community would show up to build a family's barn in a single day. This wasn't just about being friendly, it was a core survival strategy. Your survival depended on your neighbor's survival. It's a powerful lesson they don't teach anymore. But even with a strong community, there was one constant threat that could bring everyone to their knees. Number 10. Adapting quickly to harsh conditions. The frontier was a brutal teacher that gave you two options: learn fast, or you don't last. When settlers arrived from Europe, they were completely out of their element. As one historian put it, the wilderness was the true master out there. It forced them to drop their civilized habits just to stay alive. Suddenly, fancy European clothes were useless. They started wearing moccasins and living in simple log cabins. They learned to plant native corn and follow the trails carved out by Native Americans because it was the only smart way to survive. This constant, daily pressure forged a new kind of person, someone who could think on their feet and solve deadly problems in an instant. It was the ultimate test of resilience, creating a toughness they just don't make anymore. That brutal teacher, the wilderness, forged something new. As historian Frederick Jackson Turner said, it forced people to start over, making a totally new kind of American. They had to solve every problem using only what they had. This spirit of do-it-yourself wasn't just useful, it was how they survived, built lives, and truly broke free from needing anyone else. But it's also worth remembering that this freedom wasn't for everyone. Many, like enslaved people in Texas, didn't have that choice. These days, it feels like they want us to rely on the system for everything. But our ancestors proved you could build, fix, and thrive on your own terms. That deep independence, those forgotten ways, are still powerful. They're why they want you to stay ignorant. Don't let them win. Stick with us, and we'll keep uncovering the secrets they hope you never rediscover.